modifications to a BrightBuilt home. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to work through the presentation today, and then give each of the presenters an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then I will hand it over to Jessica to do an introduction and launch into the presentation. But the reason we are giving this webinar today is that we frequently get questions from interested individuals about whether or not modifications can be made to our core collection designs, and what exactly the parameters are around the modifications that are permitted. So what we've chosen to do is we've chosen 3 examples from our core collection of 12 designs, and we're going to show what the core base design is to start from, and then walk through 2 different examples of modifications that different clients have chosen to make to those core designs. You will have the opportunity to ask questions as we're going through the presentation, as well as a Q&A session at the end, at which time we will work to address some of the questions that came in to the RSVP form that was filled out in order to sign up for the webinar. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started and introduce the 3 presenters, starting with Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Benner. My role at BrightBuilt Home is project coordinator and marketing director, and I have been with the company for just under 5 years.
Hi, I'm Audrey Rolio. I am also a project coordinator as well as the energy modeling guru. I've been with BrightBuilt Home for just about 2 years, and started with high performance design in about 2011 when I took the Passive House training.
And I am Parlin Meyer. I'm also work as a project coordinator on the design team, and I'm also director of BrightBuilt. I've been with BrightBuilt since we launched in 2013. So I'm going to hand it over to Jessica to take it away with the introduction.
So to start, as many of you probably know, we have 12 designs in our core collection. And these designs were developed specifically to meet various needs and to offer a range of options. So they range from 420 square feet to just under 3,000 square feet, from a studio size to a 5-bedroom size, and offer various orientations with respect to how one might access the front door, where that might meet the needs of a site. And they also meet the needs, are meant to meet the needs of design aesthetic, across the board. That's why there are 12 of them, so that there are options to start with. So we have these 12 options to begin with. One might wonder, why modify the designs? And there are many reasons that one might choose to modify the design. For example, solar orientation. Oftentimes, how you access the site and how a house is situated on a site has specific needs, and so one might modify design for optimal solar, PV array, and passive solar. As I mentioned, entry and approach, so the front door location might need to change because of how one gets onto the site. And then modifications are because there are specific family needs. For example, an extra office is needed on the first floor that needs to be worked into the design. Other examples of modifications for access to the exterior, like screen porches, patios, any other needed spaces, and then personalization and design aesthetics. So while many of these designs fall within the traditional New England vernacular, one might want to have something a little bit more contemporary looking, in which the modification would handle that. So there are 3 design pathways that BrightBuilt Home offers for modifications to varying degrees. So the first is called the Ready Home pathway. And this is essentially an off-the-shelf option. It means that you find something that you love and works well, will work well, right from the 12 core designs. And so you're able to just hit the ground running with that design with very little or minor modifications. This pathway also includes finishes selections. The second path is called the Choice Home, and it's the most popular. It's probably about 90% of our projects fall within the Choice Home pathway. And this includes 3 iterations of design changes. All of those design changes happen within the existing footprint, although you will see that there are just a myriad of changes that one can make. All of the examples that we're showing you today fall within this Choice Home pathway. And this pathway also includes finishes selections. And then the third is called a custom home pathway, and it's where there is schematic design happening from scratch that happens within modular parameters, but it looks different than anything that we offer. And then in addition to that, 2 further iterations to develop that design, as well as finishes selection.
I just want to interject really quickly. A question just came in, which I'll go ahead and answer, but also B, wanted to make sure I reiterated that if you do have a question while somebody is presenting, please feel free to throw it into the Q&A box. We won't be necessarily watching the chat box, but if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see some buttons along the bottom of the frame. There should be a Q&A button there. Feel free to throw in additional questions as we're moving through the presentation. And the question that just came in was, will the presentation be made available after the webinar? And the answer is yes. We will be sending around a recording to everyone that RSVP'd yes, and it will also likely be available on our website eventually as well.
So as Parlin introduced, today we will be touching on 3 designs from our core collection: the VINALHAVEN, the small version, which I'll tell you more about shortly, the SEBAGO, and the Cushing. So example 1 is the VINALHAVEN, the small VINALHAVEN. And we say small because there are 2 different options for VINALHAVEN. The small and the large. The difference between the 2 is about 400 square feet, or 8 feet in length. So the small VINALHAVEN has a 40-foot by 28-foot footprint. The large has a 48 by 28-foot footprint. And the difference in that square footage is about 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and a little bit of additional living space. So in the small, 3 to 4 bedrooms and 2.5 to 3 bathrooms. The core plans show the original design of this house, kitchen, dining, living, that is open plan with a sizable pantry, and then an entry mudroom with a small powder room, and off of the living space and mudroom space, the playroom or office, however it's decided to be used. And then on the second floor, as shown, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a laundry that is off of the hall. So in example A of a modified VINALHAVEN, this design was selected by the homeowner for its size and its aesthetic. We entered into design and we take a look at the site first thing. So the site was on a steep hill. There was limited ways that we could position the house. And as you see in the image here, the garage is positioned just so because it sits on the flat spot of a very steep hill. There are also beautiful views to the north, which was a priority for the homeowner to capture. Some of the programmatic goals, they wanted a smaller office and a more sizable mudroom. They also wanted to focus on places to entertain, maximizing the kitchen. And as I mentioned, they added a garage and a breezeway connector, as well as wanted to keep within a farmhouse aesthetic. On the first floor, so you see the core design to the left, the modified design to the right. Right off the bat, you can see that the plan itself was mirrored in a couple of ways. So atypical to standard BrightBuilt designs, in which the living space and the dining space are to the south in the sunniest parts of the house. You'll see that in the modified design, the living space and the dining space are actually to the north. North is up. And that is because this client had the priority of taking advantage of those views. There are lots of windows to the north. They also reorganized the kitchen a little bit. There is an island instead of a peninsula that is, again, to maximize entertaining flow from the kitchen to the dining room. And then the dry bar that is there, again, for entertaining purposes. The office got smaller, as you see here. The mudroom got larger, and then we decided in design to fully separate the half bath from the mudroom so that there was easier access to it from other parts of the house. On the second floor, the main change here is that the client really wanted all 4 bedrooms to be on the corners of the house so that each bedroom could have 2 exterior walls where there could be windows on both sides, light from all sides. So you see that happening here. And then the other difference between the two is that oftentimes, typical to BrightBuilt homes, the primary bedroom is often on the sunniest side of the house. And here, again, to capture the best views, the client opted for the primary bedroom to be on the northeast corner, as well as the master bath. An exterior comparison, most notable on the north side. You're seeing the north elevation here. We added a lot of windows to this side to really capture those views from the living spaces and bedroom spaces. And what this does is adds a lot of glass to this side, which one might expect additional heat loss. And through the modification process and the design process, we ensure that the house will still perform to our standards by energy modeling, sizing the heating system and PV array for those changes. And on the south side, it's fairly similar. There are some changes in window proportions and sizes, but again, to capture as much sun as possible on this side. So example B of a modified VINALHAVEN, this homeowner selected the design for its size and a few of its features, which we'll get into when we look at the plans. This was a challenging site. There was limited options for placement similar to the last example, but this was an old mill site, and so there were just some site where we had to place it on the site was limited, as well as access that also determined where this house was placed. The client wanted to age in place, so that was one of the reasons they chose this design. And they also wanted to have space for extended family. They had goals of hardscaping to the south because that's where the best views were, and having an attached garage.
Just real quick, there as a question, 2 questions that came in from the same individual, and one would certainly be pertinent as we move forward, though I'm not sure what capacity we have to address it. But the first question is, were all of these changes made directly between BrightBuilt and the client, or did the client have another architect involved? And all the changes were made directly between the clients and BrightBuilt. The 3 of us are all architectural designers, and we're trained in design, and we work directly with the clients through the modifications and design process. The second question was, can we point to the changes that would help this person understand the distinction that we're talking about? I'm afraid I'm not sure we can, because of the way that the webinars are set up. It doesn't allow for the mouse to be visible. So I'm not sure we can actually point to those changes, unfortunately, but we can try to do a good job or a more clear job of describing them so that it's a little clearer. And Jessica, one question that just came in pertinent to you, that, yeah, okay, you can see that, what's meant by hardscape to the south?
Hardscape is a landscaping design that is like a patio instead of built like with like a port or like a deck. It's instead like a patio or using concrete or patio pavers.
Okay, we'll go ahead and proceed. And this actually, the next question about aging in place would be a good one to note in this presentation.
Sure. So again, core design to the left, modified design to the right. I mentioned, and the question was about aging in place, I mentioned that it was important to this client to think about aging in place when modifying the design. So again, the design was mirrored and changed. The garage location was shown. Access points were determined by where you come in on the site. And there are lots of similarities to the core design. One of the things that we paid most attention to was how the den labeled here interacted with the living space and how it was going to be planned to be used in the future. So first, the client really wanted to separate their television space from their living room space, so it's used in that fashion for now. And then they had plans to convert this into the bedroom when they age to a point where they don't feel they can climb up the stairs. So we actually reorganized the entryway a little bit. We made the bathroom, half bath, closer to the den space so that it was easily accessible when they were using it as a bedroom in the future. And then also designed it so that it could be easily renovated to add a shower later on. They didn't need that shower now, but they could easily make some interior changes and add that shower when in the future. We also added the mudroom here. I mentioned that they needed space for extended family. They're empty nesters. They have children and grandchildren. So it was important to them to add this additional space so that there would be plenty of room to store belongings, and that the muddy, quote unquote, muddy space would be separated from their living space. On the second floor, like the first example, the client really wanted the bedrooms to be moved to the corners. So all 4 bedrooms had corner windows, windows on 2 sides. The primary bedroom here happens to the southwest, as well as the primary bathroom. And then this client also really wanted to create a laundry room space that wasn't directly off the hallway. So we expanded, in design, we expanded the laundry room, and it allows them hanging space for storage and folding.
Jessica, just real quick, there is one question that came in. It seemed like example number 1 had many more modifications and customizations than 2. Was this considered a custom design?
This was not considered a custom design. Both were considered the choice home pathway, which is the second pathway. And that's a good question because the amount of modifications can vary from client to client. That's really, it's dependent on their needs and how well the original design meets their needs and how many things need to change. The only thing that the choice home pathway limits is the footprint of the house. So anything can be modified within the footprint of the house. You can completely reorganize everything if that's what makes the most sense for a client.
And the only caveat I would add to that is that the only thing that really needs to be honored in places, not across the board, but is where the 2 modules come together, the marriage wall between the 2 modules. So you'll certainly see instances where there's a substantial amount of free clear span in different spaces where that marriage wall comes together, but we just have to make sure we honor it in a few places. We can't just open it wide up throughout the entire house.
And we work with the modular manufacturer in that case for engineering purposes to make sure that the design changes are meeting codes and engineering standards.
Okay.
So just a couple of exterior elevations to show the differences here. In the modified design, you see the mudroom entry. It takes a little bit more of a modern twist. And we also split the dormer. So instead of one long dormer, we have two dormers shown here. And again, that's for visual interest that was that the client wanted.
Oops, sorry.
On the south side, fairly similar to the original design, it's window proportions and the amount of windows. We added some additional windows on the first floor to take advantage of those views to the south and also the sun.
Sorry. Getting my controls a little out of whack. Okay. I've lost my Q&A, unfortunately. So actually, I might be able to get it back. But Audrey, you can take it away while I'm working to get that back.
Before you go, Audrey, I'm just looking through the questions. So someone asked, what is the marriage wall? And that's a really good question. So in the modular world, we are constrained to certain widths for shipping purposes. And so we call them boxes. The modules are mostly constrained to about 14 feet in width. So oftentimes when you see a 28-foot wide design, that means two modules come together, and where they meet in the middle, that is called the marriage wall. We don't have a mouse, so I can't outline where you can see them, but if you look sort of down the center line, lengthwise or widthwise, you'll see where those two long
modules meet. Thank you for answering that, Jessica. All right, I think I'm back in business. All right.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be showing two examples of the SEBAGO. The SEBAGO is BrightBuilt Home's answer to a compact ranch. It offers single-story living, one-floor living. The footprint size is 1,340 square feet. It has a larger footprint of 48 feet by 28 feet. Again, that's just as Jessica was saying, two modules put together side by side. Each SEBAGO has 3 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms. So the core plans you can see in, these are just 2 examples of core SEBAGO plans. Each has 3 bedrooms on the left side with 2 full baths. 1 master bath obviously attaches to the master bedroom. And then there is open plan for the living, kitchen, and dining room, along with the entry. The entry in each of these cases is on different sides. So on the first example, it's on the north side, and on the second example, it is on the east side.
Audrey, before you move forward, relating to the open plan, someone asked, does this mean no open floor plan between the modules because there is a marriage, speaking to the marriage wall?
Sure.
Can you answer that?
Sure. You can see where on the left side of each of these plans where the bedrooms are, you can see that thicker wall going right down the middle of the design. That is the marriage wall. So as Jessica was saying, each module is 14 feet deep, and that is where 2 mods sit to each other. So it's a thicker wall where each wall has a 2x4 wall. Going over towards the open plan, on the left example, we see a post between the living and the dining, and that is holding up, basically, structural for where that marriage wall would be going right through. On the right example, it is open without a post. That requires some long beams, some structural engineering involved in that to get a clear span without a post. Otherwise, on the left side, that's a standard standard post to hold up mods.
And I would say too, just to add to that, you can imagine on the right hand side without that post shown, that also might be a condition that's fully vaulted. So if it's a fully vaulted open living space, it wouldn't have a column or posts running down that marriage wall line, because the structure would be up into the roof assembly, and that would just be one large open vaulted condition.
So for the first example of the SEBAGO, this design was selected for its single-story living. It was designed for an empty lot in suburban Brunswick, Maine. It was a long, narrow lot. The road that you see is actually a driveway on the long side of the house, and the actual road frontage is on the short side of the house on the right side. And that's where the southern orientation is on that lot, is on the roadside, the shorter end of the house. This was designed for the homeowner who is an artist with a disability, and he needed nice single-story living. The front porch was added on for him to have interaction with his neighbors. There is a mudroom and a garage added on to this SEBAGO. The mudroom actually eases the transition between the elevations of the home and the garage. And first there's one step down into the mudroom, and then there's 2 steps down when he gets into the studio. And then that garage studio is for him to work at home. He is a glass artist, and 3/4 of it is his studio. 1/4 of the garage is for his mode of transportation, which is a trike, and just trash and garden tools. So the design for this home is showing on the left. The core design is on the top right there. And the core design, you can see, like typically BrightBuilt Home would be orienting the long wall to the south so we can take advantage of solar orientation and free heat from the sun. And again, on my design for Brunswick, the south side is on the right side. That is the road side. So I modified the roof, which you'll see in a little bit, to accept solar panels on that side, but also we wanted the larger glazing to the south side. And you can see we have the entry porch on the west, entering into the large common space. There are 2 full bedrooms in this home. The second bedroom is for a guest or an eventual caregiver. And the full bath for that is across the hall. And the homeowner's bedroom is in the northeast corner, and he has his own bathroom with that. The bottom left of the core footprint, the northwest corner, is a space for him to have an office, a laundry space, and a secondary mudroom. The mudroom connector between the garage and the home has, again, that 1 step down from the home, and then going down into the studio, 2 steps down into his garage. And you can see the small area for his trike and tools, and then 3/4 of the garage, including a powder room for his glass studio. Here's a plan of the roof, which really shows the solar orientation. Typically, again, on the top right, that's the core roof, which would just be a simple gable, 1 ridge, with the south side oriented, or the long side oriented to the south for solar orientation. And in this home in Brunswick, again, the road side was the south side. So I designed a transverse roof. It has 2 ridges. They're perpendicular to each other, and that allows for the solar array to be on the south side. It also gives the front or the west elevation a more unique look. And here we are on the west side. So the transverse roof gives us that gable on the west side, and you can see the front porch there, the mudroom, and the garage. Up top is our core elevation for our core Sebago, which has more of a modern look to it. This homeowner requested a more traditional look, so we went with a porch and gable and more traditional windows.
This is a good place to interject really quickly with one question that came in, Audrey, which was, what are the roof pitches on these Sebagos? So you can just share really quickly the roof pitch on the modified versus the roof pitch on the core for reference.
Yeah, you can see that the modified design has a steeper roof. It's a 12 on 12 pitch. And I believe that the core has either an 8 on 12 or a 10 on 12.
Yeah, this version that's shown in this image is an 8-12.
8 on 12, yep. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The second design, second example of the Sebago, was also selected for single-story living and economy of scale. It was designed for a wooded angular lot in Wellfleet, Massachusetts. It does have ideal solar exposure for the south side, so you can see the long side has larger windows there. It is designed for a family of 4. It is going to be their summer home, and eventually it will be the retirement home for the couple. I added a screen porch to this home, and inside, like Parlin was saying, we have a vaulted condition in the core common area. We also added 2 offices downstairs in the basement, and to get light into those, I added window wells and windows there. Thanks. Again, the core design for the Sebago is in the top right, and the design for this particular home is in the bottom left. You can see we've got the 3 standard bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms. So the bath 2 is for the two secondary bedrooms, and the primary bedroom is on the bottom left with the primary bath directly off of that. The laundry comes off the hallway. A set of stairs goes down only to the basement offices. And then we have our space for the kitchen, living, and dining. There's a large sliding door to the screen porch and a large sliding door out to the patio. And just here's a shot of the basement offices in this particular town. It's not considered, they're not considered bedrooms. Offices are constrained to 70 square feet each. So each little office is designed at 7 feet by 10 feet. That's about it. So our front elevation has a more contemporary look, similar to the core collection of BrightBuilt Home. And this has the same ridge and same pitch as the core.
Okay. Not seeing any additional questions that are pertinent to the Sebago at the moment. We do have a couple other questions that are outstanding right now. We will definitely get to those at the end of the presentation. So rest assured we'll answer your questions in a few moments. So our next design is the Cushing. The Cushing is derived very much so from the farmhouse vernacular of New England, and was meant to address a sort of midline square footage at about 2,000 square feet with the standard 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath that is certainly within the most popular aspects of functionality that people are seeking with homes and home sizes. The footprint is narrower from the other 2 footprints we've shown thus far today. It's 24 feet, and then the first floor goes to 48 feet, whereas the second floor goes to 36 feet. So these are the core plans for the Cushing, the originally designed plans for the home. And you can see on the left-hand image in the first floor, the entry porch, which in this case is to the left, is really emphasizes that gable end, narrow face end of the house orientation to the street. So the thinking in this design is that the south would be to one side or the other of the house, and that it would really orient to have more of a side yard that would have that solar exposure if it were in an urban context, or certainly be oriented accordingly if it were in a more rural setting. So when you come in off that entry porch, you come into the living space primarily. And you have your living, dining, and kitchen area all open and interconnected in that first portion of the home. Then off the kitchen, you can see the half bath and the small compact laundry area that would, in this case, serve also to access into the basement. And that area is meant to serve largely as kind of a mudroom utility space, which would be accessed off of what is presumed to be a connector or a detached garage, or perhaps also an attached garage, if desired, onto that north side of the house. Moving into the second floor, you can see there's space for the 2 bedrooms, a bonus space in between, and then a full bath to serve both of those bedrooms. So looking at our first modification, we have a home that was selected by its homeowners because of its footprint primarily, as well as the style. The aesthetic was attractive to the clients. They very explicitly did not want to have any dormers in their particular home, which is why we see a roof form that looks like this. So this is a departure from the core design because the site had zoning constraints. It was close enough to the shore that it had to be no taller than the pre-existing home that had been in the site previously. So we had to reduce the pitch of the house in this case in order to meet that zoning requirement. So as noted, it was a very constrained site. Not only do we have height constraints, but we also had setback constraints. This footprint, this 24 by 48 foot footprint, fits nearly exactly to within inches of all the setbacks going around the lot. That also was what drove the pulling back of the overhangs on the roof. So you can see that those are more cropped overhangs than are typical with our standard designs, and that was driven because of those setbacks. This house had the lovely advantage of not only wanting to orient all its big windows and living spaces to the south for solar heat and light, but also that happened to be where the views were. So that was a happy instance here. And these clients also specifically wanted to have 2 ensuite primary bedrooms. One driver for that was because they wanted to have their primary bedroom on the second floor and then have a space on the main floor for visiting relatives, that they could really have their own space and an ensuite bathroom all to themselves, but also with the thinking in mind of the future and the potential of aging in place and being able to use this home for their primary home and make that first floor primary bedroom their owner suite as well. There is a single car garage that's attached in this case, and we'll look at that in a second in the plans. And they wanted access into that mudroom directly from the garage. So these were the considerations that drove the reconfiguration of this Cushing. Looking then at the core design on the left and comparing it to the modified design to the right, you can see some pretty substantial changes. So because of the orientation of the house to the street, it actually oriented on the north side to the street and the entry to the north. So we effectively lost that gable end entry entirely. There was no reason to retain that. There's no access to either side of the house in this case. And so we were able to nestle the 1-car garage just within the setbacks on that north side of the house and then gain access to the mudroom from that garage, from the garage into the mudroom that was really an added space to the base design. So we added that mudroom, and then off the mudroom we have the half bath plus laundry area with a utility sink. And then off that mudroom is where the kitchen is. So in this case, the kitchen actually mirrored within the living space to the southwest corner of the living space. And then when you enter on the primary entry where the entry has been moved to, you come in and you're looking into the living space as opposed to the kitchen, as you would if we had retained the original layout. So the living space reoriented accordingly, and then that primary bedroom is really fairly similar to the original design. Obviously, the orientation of the bathroom and access to the bathroom changed slightly, as you can see, between the core design and the modified design. But otherwise, the overall layout was fairly similar to the core design in this case for the ensuite bedroom. Moving into the upstairs, because the stairs shifted, so actually I'll go back for a moment to that first floor to show the stair had shifted from being fairly close to that gable end on the core design to more centrally in the house. And that allowed us to arrive on the second floor right at the corner of where that reduced second floor footprint ends. That gave us some really nice light coming down into the stairwell, and also allowed for a little bit more of a public-private separation on the second floor. So when you arrive onto the second floor, you arrive near where there's sort of a media room here on that corner, southwest corner condition. So that's a departure from the core design where the core had 2 bedrooms at each corner and then that bonus room in the middle. The bonus room in this case is on the corner and is actually partitioned out with 2 pocket doors that are frosted glass in this case. And then beyond that space, there are the 2 additional bedrooms. There's the guest room, centrally located and positioned directly opposite a full bath, and then another ensuite primary bedroom on the southeast corner. So then looking at the elevations, you can certainly see the impact of the reduced roof pitch in this case. I will say, I will add that we could have maintained that primary 12-12 roof pitch and brought it down to meet the requirements of the zoning height restrictions, and then have dormers in the primary living spaces on the second floor to really retain that architectural 12-12 roof pitch. But in this case, the homeowners very explicitly did not want to have dormers, and so the altered roof pitch was the option that was best suited for them. But this is that modified orientation on the north side there. You can see with the moved entry, that primary entry then becomes more centrally on the long face of the house. And in this case, of course, we've got the single car garage as well. So going to our modified Cushing option B, or second version that we're looking at today. This one certainly more closely resembles the base design with some differences. So these clients opted for this design because they really liked the aesthetic of it. They felt it fit contextually into the landscape of the surrounding area, which was largely rural farmlands with historic homes. They did have some considerations around the entry orientation and how the house was actually going to be positioned with respect to the street versus how they were going to be primarily accessing the house on a daily basis. And then they wanted that ground floor owner bedroom. They also wanted to have a little bit more of a defined mudroom and half bath. They really love the Cushing, but they recognized that the defined mudroom and half bath wasn't as strong in the core design, so they wanted to make sure they captured that in their modifications. And they also, at the time, this is pre-COVID, but they wanted to have the option for work from home space, which now I'm sure they're very grateful they have. So looking at the core design versus the modified design, the left-hand side being the core, the right-hand side being the modified, you can see that really it is fairly similar to the core design with the following exceptions. So on the right-hand side of the modified design, you can see that what would normally be the primary entry in our core design is really the functional side entry for the clients. So the clients are going to be coming and going from that gable end. That's where their driveway is. That's where they'll be parking. And so that's where their primary mudroom space is, with a closet and a mudroom, hooks and shelves and cubbies. We shoehorned a very compact powder room off that space. Certainly very functional as a space and as a bathroom, not particularly spacious, but that was all that they needed and all they wanted. They didn't need it to be particularly big. And then the primary entry, which orients to the street then, is along the long face, north face of the house. And that's really what, it's almost for show. It's really, it orients to the street, and it'll have a pathway from the road, but the homeowners expect that this entry won't be used all that frequently. But as far as the main living space, that space largely is similar to the core design, and the master primary bedroom largely is similar, with some exceptions to the arrangement of the bathroom and the closet there. Moving upstairs then, because the stair again shifted slightly, was pushed further back from the entry than in our core design. It arrives in a slightly different location on the second floor, but that also opened up some opportunities. So in this case, we did have the 2 bedrooms at the southeast and southwest corners. The bonus room became, again, partitioned off via some pocket doors to become kind of a media room / playroom for the 2 children that were going to be living in the rooms upstairs. And then we nested a little office into that northwest corner, which is certainly compact, but more than ample for a comfortably sized desk, some bookshelves, and some natural light. Then in the full bath, we also expanded that space a little bit to add a double vanity and some linen storage. So this is the second floor modified design of the Cushing in this case. So to get a sense of what the implications are for some of those changes that were made to the exteriors, we can compare the north side of the core design on the left and the north side of this modified design on the right. So you can see that kind of emphasized entry that will orient to the street in this case, but on the east side in this case of this home, that's going to be the primary entry that's actually used by the homeowners the most. And you can see that there in comparison to the core design. So there's some minor changes to the entry porch, certainly some height and emphasis added to the main windows on the first floor, but otherwise largely similar. And then on the south side, even more so, the similarities are more distinctive. In this case, the homeowners wanted a sliding door from their master bedroom into the deck and patio space, so they added a slider there. But otherwise, the south facade looks very similar to in the core design. So to summarize, we have 12 designs in that core collection. If you're going to go with the choice pathway and choose one of those 12 designs from which to start, you would start with that and then work with one of the design team members to make the modifications to it. In each case, whenever we're doing that, where we're going through the choice pathway, we're starting with one of the known designs, we have 3 rounds of design modifications built into the design process. So if in the first round, after the first round, I'm going to make further modifications, you have 2 subsequent rounds to be able to do so. So that is the choice pathway of the 3 design pathways that we have. Ready, choice, and custom are the 3 design pathways. As we've shown, modifications can be made for a various number of reasons. And certainly if we haven't captured the reasons that you might make modifications, if we haven't captured those reasons today, that doesn't mean that they can't be done. There's a myriad of reasons that we might make modifications to a base design. And we do, of course, also have customization of finishes. So clients are able to really choose the finishes for their home, as you can see from some of the example photographs we've shown in the presentation today. But as noted there, that might be a good topic for another day, for a different webinar. So we have about 10 minutes now left in the hour where we can answer some questions. We've had some more questions come in, and I don't know if Audrey or Jessica, if you have a couple queued up, that would be good to address right now, and we can circle back into the presentation if we need to.
Sure. There's a couple of questions about ceiling heights, and also can you raise the first floor ceilings to 10 feet?
Sure, I'll field that one real quick. So our standard ceiling heights are 9 foot for the first floor and 8 foot for the second floor. This is due to constraints in shipping. So it generally can be difficult to go taller than 8 feet for a second floor and taller than 9 feet for a first floor, though it does depend on where you're located. In Maine, we have a little bit more flexibility than we do in other parts of New England. But that would, the specificity of that would have to be applied based on where you're located. 10 feet, therefore, is actually pretty hard to achieve with modular because we have height constraints once the entire assembly plus the flatbed carrier is moving across the road. It can't be greater than 13.5 feet, generally speaking. Okay, so others?
There's a couple of questions about pricing the modifications that they've seen today.
Okay. So yes, I think I saw one of them was asking for specific costs of each of the modifications. That there isn't necessarily a number associated with the modifications themselves. We do have price differentials with the different design pathways that we offer. So I'll go back to that, where we talk about the different design pathways: ready, choice, and custom. With each of these agreements, we have a design contract associated with each, and each of them has different cost implications. So the Ready Home is a 12K contract, the Choice Home is an 18K contract, and the custom pathway is a 24K contract. In each of those contracts, we build in that we are making modifications. So individual modifications don't incur any additional design fee charges. The cost implications of those changes for construction will depend a little bit on what they are. In most cases, because you're staying within the footprint, the changes themselves won't actually be all that impactful on cost. The cost implications will be more in the finished selections for those spaces. So your flooring, your tile, what are the surfaces that are incorporated into those spaces that have now been added or expanded. But the changes that you've seen from a design standpoint today have all been built into that Choice Home process.
I have another interesting question. If you want to make a modification 3 years down the road, is BrightBuilt involved in that?
Jessica, I was just going to arbitrarily bump these to you just so you can answer some too. Do you want to take that one?
Sure. So the question was, if you make modifications 3 years down the road, is BrightBuilt involved? So initially, when someone hires us for a design, we can certainly plan for modifications 3 years down the road. But there is, the design contract that Parlin mentioned is signed on for sort of a limited scope of services. So if there are 3 years down the road plans and execution of those plans to make those modifications, we wouldn't necessarily be involved unless hired again for additional design services.
I was muted. Here's a question. Please explain what's done to join modules in terms of how they are sealed and secured.
Yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
So modules themselves are fastened together along the marriage wall, and in the basement they actually rest upon a lolly or Schedule 40 column, if we're getting really technical, that they will be bolted to. And then as far as sealing them on the exterior, of course, there's a gap between the two where the two modules come together. That would be basically patched with sheathing, and then that sheathing would be taped and sealed to the rest of the sheathing around the house, chasing out all of the cracks and leaks to ensure proper air sealing.
I want to make sure we're getting through as many questions as possible. Now, I do know that there are some additional questions that were submitted as part of the RSVP, so might try to move through some of these quickly. So somebody asked about the SEBAGO plans being downloadable and that the website isn't allowing for that right now. We will look into that and hopefully address that forthwith. So they should be downloadable right now. I'm not sure what's going on with that. And we do have builders in the Hudson, New York area. So reach out and we can give you more information on that. Jessica, do you want to answer this one real quick? Does it happen that the client's customizations are such that they are closer aligned with a different core design than the one they started with?
I guess that could happen. Sure. Sometimes, yes, that we get through several iterations of design and it turns out that maybe it would have been better suited to start with a different core design. However, usually it turns out that the client is very happy, and so the design has been modified to suit their needs, and there's no need to backtrack. But certainly, certain design moves could have been made easier or navigated better if they had started somewhere else.
Okay, and then Michael has asked if we offer shell-only packages for finishing by local builders. One, I will say all of our homes are finished by local builders. So the homes are constructed, 70% of the home is constructed as a module in offsite factory and then shipped to its site, at which point a site builder, a local general contractor, will take the home from there and do the interior, finish out any interior finishes that need to be completed, and tie in the systems and do the remainder of the work required. So that's exactly how we're structured already. But as far as shell packages, I think that would be a question best answered in a specific conversation with Jay Sandifer, our head of sales. It's going to depend a little bit on what is meant by shell package and where you are located. So can't speak to some of the specific aspects of that at the moment. And then real quick, one person asked, do other designs allow for variation in footprint, e.g. 40 by 28, 48 by 28? So yes, many of the designs that we feature have different footprints from each other. If you want to change the footprint of an existing design, that would be a conversation. So that's where we start to get into a departure from our choice home pathway, whereby we're making all of the modifications that we're making within the existing footprint of the core design. So if you had a core design that you really liked and you wanted to expand or contract its footprint for some reason, we're certainly open to talking about that. We'd have to know better what you're looking to do in order to know what the implications are for our design pathway that we choose accordingly. And then
there's a question, do you have more examples of adding decks or uninsulated spaces?
I can answer it. So we have tons of examples of adding decks or uninsulated spaces or ancillary structures. Almost every project that we work on adds these things. Parlin, can you actually go to the first VINALHAVEN example? I think probably many of us didn't point out in our examples here because there were so many other things to point out. That there are lots of modifications happening in the example shown today with respect to decks and porches. So one more, if we could go to the plans. So for example, the core design has a fairly simple limited deck to the south here, including a screen porch, whereas the modified design completely expands that deck and wraps it around the corner. Again, that was to capture the farmhouse aesthetic that this homeowner was going for, as well as accommodate really large entertainment spaces. So as an example, yes, those things are almost always factored into our design process.
So we're at 1 p.m. I'm going to say that we can continue to answer questions, so feel free to stay on with us if you would like to do so. We'll probably take another 15 minutes or so to continue to answer questions. But if you do have to depart, thank you so much for joining us today. And do feel free to reach out if you have any further questions about the webinar itself or specific to something you're thinking about doing. Jay Sandifer, who is unable to be with us today, will likely be the person who you will interface with if you reach out, and he'll be happy to answer any questions accordingly. So thank you again so much for joining us today, and those of you who are staying with us, we will continue to answer questions.
Okay, here's a question. Can you design living space into your upper level garage for extra bedrooms and living space with a full bathroom?
Before we move on, Audrey, one
Oh,
question came in about the VINALHAVEN porch that I thought would be appropriate to answer.
okay.
So the question is, how big could a wraparound porch like the VINALHAVEN A porch be? And that is as big as a homeowner might need, and also as big as what fits within an established budget. So both of those things have to be considered when designing these things, of course. I don't want to say anything is possible, but all options can be explored in terms of size.
Sure. And then the previous question, can you design living space into your upper level garage for extra bedrooms and living space with a full bathroom?
The shorter answer is yes, definitely. The longer answer has to do with considerations around the best bang for your buck in terms of expanded square footage space and performance considerations. So when you finish that space above a garage, you do have to take into consideration that you have to insulate every side of the cube as opposed to just a couple sides of the cube, depending on how it meets the rest of the house and the envelope of the house. So it's absolutely possible. It may have further considerations, and it's fairly common that we propose alternate spaces to finish out instead of the space above the garage, because of the performance requirements and the air sealing and insulating and mechanical requirements of that space.
Okie doke. How long does it typically take to go through the 3 rounds of design modifications?
I'll go ahead and answer this one. It depends. If structured on our kind of optimum timeline, we could conceivably get through design in about 2 to 3 months or less, depending on your chosen pathway. Certainly, if you're going with the Ready Home pathway, we can move a lot faster. But generally, 2 to 3 months is what's required anyway for the client to make the finish selections for the house. Because that is also part of that design process where we're going through and we're really allocating virtually all of the finish designations for the entirety of the house before shovels ever hit the dirt. So the modular approach is a little bit unique in that respect. What that also means is all of your selections are informed in advance, and therefore you have a really good sense of the costs of the entire project going into it before construction even begins. So we have also had design processes take upwards of, 3 to 8 months, depending on the requirements of the project and depending on the client's needs for the process, the design process itself, and moving through the different iterations as well as the finished selections process. But certainly it can be done in 2 to 3 months or even less, depending on your needs from a timing standpoint.
Yeah. Do all your models require basements? And then there is a simple question, can these homes be built on piles?
You want to take that one, Jessica?
Sure. So I guess the answer is more so that they don't necessarily require basements, but they can't be built on slabs. And that is because one needs to get under the module to hook up utilities, and it also comes with floor framing already. So these homes can be built on crawl spaces. The sidekicks, for example, can be built on piles, but it takes additional requirements for insulation underneath the floor as well as air sealing. So there are, as well as hooking up utilities when they're on piles. There needs to be a space where water lines and drain lines are in an insulated space from the house to the ground. So it does change what we do to some degree. I would say the core designs are designed to be on a basement or crawl space, insulated.
Does BrightBuilt Home represent the homeowner at town build review meetings, or is it the contractor?
Audrey, do you want to answer?
Sure. Typically, a contractor would be submitting the plan for permit, and I suspect that for those review meetings, it would be the contractor as well, unless we've had other examples.
Yeah, we can. It is possible for the designers to be representatives of the homeowners in instances that that's desired, or if there's a specific need for it. It's not built into the core design package, so so it'd be something that we would want to talk about if it's required for the process.
In the time of COVID, could you speak to air exchange and air filtration? I'll just take that.
Sure.
In all of our models, we have ventilation systems, and each of the ventilation systems has a filtration system. And so there's constant ventilation with either an ERV or an HRV. It brings in fresh air and exhausts the stale air and also vapor from the home. Regarding filtration, I think that, you know, with all mechanical systems that have filters, you really have to be diligent and clean those on a regular basis.
One follow-up question to the basement question was, what if you have ledge and have to have a partial basement? That's no problem at all. We can certainly step the levels within the basement. You can have a shallow crawl space in some areas and a deep full basement in others, or a shallow crawl space throughout the entirety. It's just only need roughly 3 to 4 feet of space underneath the finished floor, and able to allow ample room to be able to get underneath, make connections, and allow tradesmen and service technicians to get underneath if required. And then somebody, as a follow-up to that, has asked to explain the differences between slab, crawl space, and basement. A slab is a condition whereby you have no space underneath the primary floor of the home, and that primary floor typically is concrete. That is essentially the foundational base of the home, is that slab, and that's why it has that rather illustrious name. And then a crawl space is effectively a shortened space underneath the floor framing. Historically, a crawl space was a fairly undesirable space that had a dirt floor and you would never want to go into or see. In these homes, it is essentially just a short basement. It has a full concrete slab. It's fully air insulated and sealed from the exterior and from grade. It is part of the conditioned envelope of the home, so it is warm, can be used for storage, can be used for some mechanical systems, etc. So it's not a traditional crawl space by any means. And then a basement, of course, is the full height, 7 to 8 foot of space between that concrete slab and the floor framing of the first floor.
Oops, sorry. Are you done?
Yes.
Do you have a backlog of work at this time? If so, what's the estimated time before you could begin a project that is contracted for today?
We currently are, I would say slots are filling up pretty quickly at the moment, but I would say if we had a new contract signed today, we would be able to begin it in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So that's our current status. So we can certainly start pretty quickly with any new projects signing on today.
And then there's one last question. Can you give us cost information as you are mentioning? I think that.
Yeah, I think that might have been relevant to what we were talking about earlier about the modifications. So
that seems to be all of the questions.
Okay, we do have some questions that came in prior to in the RSVP form. Any of those look like they have not been addressed yet, or would be good to answer?
Oh, here's another question. Does the little diamond or others, can the little diamond or others be expanded in the footprint like the ones that you showed?
So this goes back to the notion of working within our existing footprint. So again, it's a matter, in this case, of whether or not you're working within a choice design pathway or a custom pathway. So if you want to expand or contract any one of the pre-existing footprints of any of the designs, whether it's the ones that we've shown today or any of the others within the 12 of the core collection, we can certainly talk about what that means and what that might look like as far as our design services are concerned. But yes, we could expand or contract any of the designs that we have existing for various reasons, with some limitations to the overall aesthetic. So if you were to widen them, that would be more challenging with respect to the modular components. If you want to lengthen them, that's a lot more doable. So really, that question will probably be best answered with a specific conversation if you have specific questions about that. And then Audrey and Jessica, I can't actually view the RSVP form. So were there any questions in that haven't been addressed today and would be good to cover?
Here's a question. What are the top 3 choices one can make to reduce costs?
So maybe each of us can take one. Certainly a big one is square footage, and just overall size of the home is a big way to make a pretty big impact on budget considerations. So I'll choose size for my answer.
I'll choose limiting exterior adjustments. If you're adding a garage, obviously not adding a garage is a lot less expensive than adding a garage. So keeping exterior additions to a minimum.
I don't know, maybe there are top 4. I guess I have 2 in my mind. Another is finishes selection. So being mindful of what finishes are chosen and the cost. There's an extreme disparity in cost between, say, laminate countertops and quartz or solid surface countertops. So across the board, being mindful of that to reduce costs. And then also, sometimes this is within your control and sometimes it's not, but site considerations also have a huge factor on cost. So are you building on a hard lot or an easy lot? Those are really good questions to ask when you're looking for land. Is it flat? Does it have ledge? And those can impact, how far are you going to have to build a driveway? All of those things can impact cost. So the easier the site to build is to build on, the more you can reduce costs.
We want to understand the timing, process, and costs for customization. Also, does your team do any required structural analysis to ensure design choices are safe and allowed by code? Or do we need to hire someone else for this?
Can you repeat the first question, Audrey?
Yeah, we want to understand the timing, process, and costs for customization.
Okay, so timing is really in that 2 to 3 month time frame that we had noted earlier. So if you sign on for the choice pathway where you're making modifications to one of our existing core designs, you can plan on roughly 2 to 3 months for the design process. Can go longer, could conceivably be shortened depending on the specific needs of the project. And then the second part of that question, I think, referred to engineering. Mm-hmm. And because of the way that we are structured, whereby we work with modular manufacturers, they all have engineering in-house. And so they will look at all the engineering. So any modifications get run through their engineering team. So it's not necessary to hire anybody separately. And usually we all have a pretty sharp eye to knowing, where and when there will be significant enough structural changes to flag a change to take to the manufacturer in advance of furthering the design to ensure it's actually doable and will, meet the structural requirements of the home.
I think that puts us at 1:15.
Yeah. So I think there were some additional questions. Actually, just real quick, one just popped up in Q&A, which I'll go ahead and address. But can you build the first floor of a 2-floor plan and add a second floor in the future? Absolutely, you could definitely do this. I think if that were a plan of somebody, if that were your plan, that we would want to be thinking about some of the engineering questions in advance to make sure that that is accounted for in the initial pass of the design. But yes, that's absolutely something that can be done, and it could be done either modular or stick to do for the addition when that happens down the road.
I think there are also things that we can do in design to accommodate that future renovation of a second floor, like stubbing plumbing up into that space so that it can be more easily added to at a later time.
Yeah, and stairs too, if we wanted to be thinking about where stairs would be located. That's another good thing to plan for. All right, well, I know that there are some questions that came through on the RSVP form that we may not have addressed today, but please, please absolutely feel free to reach out at any time and pose those questions. We're more than happy to address them. And thank you again so much for joining us today, those of you who are still with us. And we look forward to seeing you again in a subsequent webinar. And this will be recorded and sent around to all of the attendees and all those who wanted to join today. So thanks again.
Thank you.